Let's begin part 13, Recursive Radicalism of Nick Fuentes. There's been a slight interaction with the channel recently. New subscribers. It's slightly growing. There's some people interested in these writings. I am Abe Zucca. These writings are written by me. They are musings and meditations, axioms, aphorisms. I'm a painter and writer in downtown Phoenix. This is, once again, this is part 13, Recursive Radicalism. What is recursive radicalism? It's a loop. It's a loop of 1 minute you're marginal, next minute you're main. You're in the main line. And so this is a curvature of novelty. So let's begin. The interventionist temple, the long timeline state, and the industrial paradox. The furnace dreams in centuries while markets dream in quarters. Every empire is a wager on time itself. Where industry collapses, myth rushes in to explain the void. The long timeline state and the problem of national duration. Every civilization confronts the dilemma of time. The private actor thinks in years, the trader in quarters, but the state, if it wishes to survive, must think in centuries. For no short-term incentive structure has ever preserved a long-term empire. The long timeline state emerges when a nation realizes that markets cannot dream beyond the present tense. The innovation without infrastructure is a form of amnesia, and that destiny requires temporal horizons inaccessible to individual actors. A society that confuses liberty with laissez-faire soon discovers that freedom without foresight leads to fragility. For the rails of sovereignty must be laid before the train of crisis arrives. Where the state refuses long-range guardianship, the void is filled by rival powers. The algorithmic, the foreign, the subterranean, each offering their own timelines, each indifferent to the nation's continuity. Thus, the long timeline state is not tyranny, but stewardship. The recognition that some structures must outlive elections, markets, and public moods in order to carry civilization through in its dark intervals. The industrial paradox, death by efficiency, salvation by redundancy. Yeah, I sneak into this library at night when the guards are sleeping. They always take a nap right around this time. That is why I have to read very quietly. Just read the title and you could find out what I'm reading. What do you think of that? Read the title of the videos. The industrial paradox, death by efficiency, salvation by redundancy. Industrial prophecy reveals the central paradox of modernity. Nations die not when they fail to optimize, but when they optimize too well, outsourcing their sinews in pursuit of ever pure efficiency until the body politic becomes weightless. A country that delegates its manufacturing to distant shores may profit in the short term, but becomes metaphysically hollow. as though its spirits were being siphoned along the same shipping lanes that carry its factories away. Deindustrialization is not merely economic decline, but ontological thinning, the loss of the sacred density that once tethered a people to matter, craft, locality, in the world of things. No state can project force without production, and no people can produce meaning without craft. Thus, industrial weakness becomes cultural weakness, and cultural weakness becomes geopolitical liability. The industrial paradox concludes: efficiency without sovereignty is fragility disguised as progress, and convenience is the velvet glove that hides a steel dependency. People don't see the title of this video. Well, let me help you out. This is a book I wrote called The Recursive Radicalism of Nick Fuentes, or Socratic Groyper Axioms. You might be able to see it. I doubt it on the cover. I doubt it's probably too dark, but it's right here. Anyways, this is part 13. The interventionist temple and the sacraments of built power. Intervention, when mythically understood, is not micromanagement but ritual architecture, a deliberate shaping of economic rivers so they do not erode the foundations of the nation that houses them. The interventionist state is less a commander than a gardener of heavy industry, ordering growth where markets would let the soil go barren, nurturing capabilities that no private actor can justify, yet every citizen requires. Tariffs in this cosmology are not weapons but boundary stones marking the perimeters of the national organism and declaring that its lifeblood shall not be siphoned away by distant empires. Public works, when animated by collective purpose rather than bureaucratic inertia, become rites of renewal. Dams as avatars, shipyards as monasteries, semiconductor foundries as new churches of continuity. Subsidies fail only when they are distributed by alms, when they are wielded as instruments of statecraft. They become the lifeblood of industrial resurrection, coaxing dormant capacities back into being. If I have to answer every time someone asks, what am I reading? Do you not see the title of the video? Is it blank where you're at? The problem of expertise in the technical priesthood. In every epoch, a society must decide who interprets the hidden grammars of its survival. The demagogue, the investor, or the technician. Only one of these sees the world in terms of systems rather than slogans. Technocracy becomes dangerous when it governs values, but becomes indispensable when it governs logistics. For without interpreters of a complexity, the state navigates blind through the labyrinths of modern interdependence. The true technocrat is neither ruler nor oracle, but steward of the invisible supply chains, cybernetic networks, energy grids, and the industrial arteries through which national agencies flows. A nation that neglects expertise invites predation, for rival empires employ their own priests of complexity, decoding the weaknesses of societies that refuse to know themselves. Yet expertise without accountability becomes alchemy without ethics. Thus, the technical priesthood must be paired with democratic light, even as it operates within an arcane chambers of calculation. Yeah, I could wait for him to go live, or I could just do this video. I usually just check it out in the morning. Accelerationist becomes catastrophic only when untethered from direction. For speed without orientation is indistinguishable from collapse. Indistinguishable from collapse dresses momentum. Civilizations accelerate most dangerously not when they race forward, but when they drift, when inertia masquerades as stability, and no faction possesses the will to impose a coherent trajectory. The wise state accelerates only towards a chosen horizon: re-industrialization, technological sovereignty, and infrastructure renaissance. Anything less becomes nihilism, wearing the costume of futurity. Political accelerationism fails because it wagers on chaos. Industrial accelerationism succeeds when it wagers on construction, on the ability of a people to build faster than their rivals unravel. The goal of acceleration is not destruction but destiny. Denser capabilities, denser institutions, denser continuities, until the nation becomes too materially integrated to splinter along its fault lines. The limits of market soteriology. The myth of self-regulating market dissolves under the weight of geopolitical reality. For trade routes are not abstractions but arteries defended by fleets, treaties, and blood. You don't have to worry about page 1. It just keeps, these writings aren't really, they don't add up. They just kind of circle back on each other. It's like free associating statements. I like to think these readings are MK Ultra passwords for activating people. Markets allocate goods, only states allocate futures, and where futures collapse, goods soon follow. The free market, left entirely to itself, becomes an algorithm for short horizons, an intelligence optimized for profit but blind to national continuity. Thus the state intervenes not to smother the market but to remind it of the long game, the existential stakes, the cosmic temporality of civilizations that wish to endure rather than flicker. A market without a mission becomes a weather system. A state without a market becomes a tomb. Only their synthesis gives rise to a living empire. New deals for new cosmologies. Every era requires its own new deal. Not a repetition of the past, but a reimagining of the national purpose, calibrated to the vulnerabilities and possibilities of its technological moment. Public works become sacred when they bind a fractured polity into a single spatial imagination, teaching millions that they participate in the construction of something larger than themselves. Modern civilization needs not shovels but fabs, not dams but data centers fortified against collapse, not highways but resilient energy nets capable of withstanding the storms of the century. The New Deal is not a welfare program but a metaphysical wager. The only published writings I have are the stuff I sell in my gallery in downtown Phoenix. I don't sell anything yet online. I will, though. But I pretty much print these up myself and I sell them for $20 at the gallery at 1301 Grand Ave. I could mail it to you if you want, but I had to figure that out. The New Deal is not a welfare program, but a metaphysical wager that a people which builds together remembers itself together. Thus, public works are less policy than liturgy, the collective affirmation of shared destiny through the medium of shared construction. The specter of chaos and the responsibility of power. To flirt with systemic collapse is to gamble with forces that do not forgive. Chaos does not negotiate, it merely consumes the weak and rewards the lucky. Political nihilism offers the illusion of agency by burning the stage, yet history shows that the ashes of collapsed states nurture only warlords and opportunists. True agency is expressed not through destruction, but through the capacity to impose coherency on entropy, to choose direction when every faction is tempted by drift. The responsible state does not pursue apocalypse to reveal truth. It builds institutions capable of surviving truth's arrival. Thus, anti-chaos becomes a civic virtue, the commitment to continuity, to resisting the seductions of collapse, to choosing creation over conflagration. The Threshold Coalition, the delegitimating fire, and the populist eschatology. I would just wait, just see how this channel goes. Maybe I gain more followers and it makes more sense to publish these books and to create an economy out of selling them. The Threshold Coalition, the delegitimating fire, and the populist eschatology. Legitimacy is the myth a nation tells itself to avoid hearing the cracking of its foundations. Coalitions are not alliances, but creatures stitched, breathing, hungering. Revolution is seldom the fire, it is the withdrawal of fuel. The leverage, withdrawal, and the political scaffold. A movement discovers its power only when it withholds it. For participation without condition is indistinguishable from surrender, and the electorate becomes a reservoir poured at will into pre-carved channels. To refuse endorsement is not to destroy the system, but to expose the vacuum inside it. The refusal becomes a mirror in which the ruling myth sees its own fragility reflected back. Every ultimatum is a ritual test, a demand that a leader reveals whether he serves the base or the apparatus that encloses him, whether he stands on soil or on scaffolding. Leverage is not rebellion, but calibration, the attempt to realign a drifting structure without collapsing it, to force recognition without setting fire to the pillars. Yet leverage has a half-life. Once a candidate grows too powerful, the people become weightless again, and the ultimatum evaporates into symbolism, absorbed by inevitability. Delegitimization and the politics of relief. A system is never weakened by dissent, but by relief. For when a disillusioned nation suddenly feels reassured, its appetites for structural change dissolves, and the storm dissolves into compliance. If victory becomes tranquilizing, legitimacy expands like a fog, covering unresolved fractures with the aesthetic of things are fine again, a narcotic more potent than propaganda. Delegitimization thrives only when hope collapses. Restoration kills delegitimization by offering an oxygen mask of normalcy to those who were prepared to burn the old edifice down. The paradox of reform is thus revealed. The better the ruler performs, the more he reinscribes the very system his followers hope he would transcend. Delegitimization is a finite flame, bright only when the nation is terrified. Extinguished the moment the populace feels it can rest, even if the architecture has no change. The populist contract and conditional allegiance. Populism is not a creed, but a contract, a provisional pact between the governed and the figure they momentarily elevate to embody their grievances. Contracts and the metaphysics must be explicit, for populism without terms becomes a sacrificial rite in which the people give everything and receive gestures in return. The base retains power only if it binds its loyalty to conditions, not commands, because conditions tether leaders to the soil instead of letting them drift into the atmosphere of donors, lobbies, and distant wars. Conditional allegiance is not treason, but the only safeguard against political entropy. Unconditional allegiance is simply monarchy in populist clothing. Thus, the base must articulate its terms or dissolve into a cheering section for forces that extract their energy while dismissing their demands. The bifurcated future, destiny by election or destiny by collapse. Two visions haunt every democratic empire: the reformatory vision, which seeks transformation through the ballot, and the catastrophic vision, which imagines purification through collapse. The former believes in leverage, the later believes in combustion. Both are responses to the same wound, the sense that institutions no longer transmit the will of the people. But collapse is a blind God. It answers prayers by obliterating petitioners and enemies alike, offering no guarantee that the world built after the ashes resembles the world that we desire. Reform, however, must fight its own illusions, chief among them the idea that incremental gains can substitute for structural recalibration, or that competence alone can neutralize entrenched power. The wise movement refuses both idolatry and despair. It neither worships the system nor fantasizes about its annihilation, but navigates the narrow corridor between them. The cross-alignment, the populist progressive fusion. Cross-alignment is the art of summoning a political chimera, a creature stitched from bodies that were never meant to inhabit the same skin. The progressive lion, the nationalist bull, the anti-elite serpent. The chimera forms not through shared ideology, but through shared enemies. Secrecy, oligarchy, unaccountable global flows. The perpetual war machine, the administrative priesthood. This power rests in recognition that anger is bipartisan even when solutions are not, and that the public hungers for unity against predation more than unity around doctrine. Yet the chimera is inherently unstable. Each faction must amputate parts of itself to remain inside the coalition, and every concession becomes a wound that may later reopen. Coalitional eschatology promises a century of rule, but only if the chimera learns to breathe with one lung and speak with one mouth, tasks that have undone every hybrid beast in political history. Untouchable issues and the limits of fusion. Every coalition contains its sacred, immovable stones, issues that cannot be compromised without shattering identity itself, and thus form the unbridgeable crevice across which unity must leap or perish. A populist progressive fusion collapses the moment it touches the sacramental pillar of either side: guns, speech, embodiment, reproduction, borders, and the metaphysics of national belonging. On such matters, compromise is not political but ontological. To moderate them is to erase the self one was negotiating with in the first place. Thus, the coalition is viable only on terrains where identity is not absolute. Corruption, secrecy, monopolies, intelligence overreach, foreign entanglements, and the machinery of elite impunity. Where identity hardens, fusion fails. Where identity softens, fusion flowers. The great populist eschatology, and we're going to end with these last 5. Eschatology enters politics when movements begin to think in thresholds rather than cycles. The belief that one election can determine not just policy, but the existential trajectory of the nation. This eschatology is fed by demographic arithmetic, imperial overextension, technological displacement, and cultural fragmentation, forces that make each contest feel final. When a population believes a single outcome can foreclose its future, every ballot becomes a sacrament, and every disappointment becomes a revelation of structural damnation. Populist eschatology is thus both mobilizing and paralyzing. It lifts millions into urgency, yet traps them in fatalism when their chosen outcome does not manifest. A movement survives its own eschatology only by discovering that the world does not end even when its predictions fail, only transformation, often into shapes it had never foreseen. A movement survives its own eschatology only by discovering that the world does not end even when its predictions fail, only transforms, often into shapes it had never foreseen. That's the end of part 13. Check them out at zuccagallery.com. Share the channel. I'm going to start part 14 tomorrow. I'll see you guys later.